All right, everyone. So what is balance? That's the first question you got to ask yourself. So balance, if you're familiar with the scales we used in middle school, right? You have the one side, which is your known quantity. Then you have the other, which is your unknown quantity. And then you have the middle part and all the extra weights to adjust them and get them to balance out, right? So a lot of people hear balance and they think, oh, that's making the combats even, making the combats fair. No, that's not what balance is. Balance is determining how hard you want to hit and getting the monsters to hit that hard. That way you don't have a weak combat that you want to be hard, or you don't have an easy combat that turns into a TPK. Okay, so the first question you got to ask yourself is, what is my known quantity, right? And that is your players. So your players are on the left side, then the known quantity. You got to say, okay, what are their stats? And you should try and get, an average idea of what their party stats are. And there's three types of monsters that you can throw at them, okay? There's the super player, there's the player plus, and there's the half player. So the super player is what's going to be a really challenging character. He should have twice the stats of the player characters. This is just a rule of thumb for new DMs, but twice the stats of the player characters, that's going to be a nice challenge. Now, of course, you can't make his armor class, 40, but let's look at armor class another way, all right? Everyone has a base armor class of 10, right? So what's the difference? What's the bonus? So let's say the paladin has an armor class of 18, so he's got a bonus of 8. Let's say the wizard has an armor class of 12, so he's got a bonus of 2. So average goes out, 2 and 8, that's 10 divided by 2, 5. So give him an armor class of 20, right? Because 10 plus 5, but you take that 5 and make it twice as big. So it's a modified 20 for the armor class, okay? And then for the attack bonus, I should say, what's their proficiency? Double that, right? Don't double the whole attack roll because he's going to hit every single attack. But just take their bonuses, I would say, is a nice rule of thumb, and double them. All right. For damage, you just decide if you want him to hit hard or soft. And a higher attack bonus is going to make him hit harder by default, and a higher damage roll is going to make him hit harder if he can hit. So just bear in mind that while hitting for 100 damage, but a +0 modifier, that's basically only going to hit on very high rolls. Very, very rarely is it going to hit. It's going to hit like one-fifth of the time, maybe, because statistics isn't always exact like that. So that's the super player. And the super player is worth 4 points, okay? The player plus is worth 2 points. And he is going to be basically just the best version of the players that you have. So you take the highest stat of each of them. Let's say the barbarian has 40 effective hit points, and the paladin has an armor class of 18, and the cleric has a spell save of 16, okay? Take all of that and give it all to him. So he's got an armor class of 18, 40 hit points, and a spell save of 16. Yes, he's challenging to the party, but he's not a super player. He's merely a player plus. He's the idealized player, okay? And then the half player is going to have half the stats of your players, right? So you just do what you did for the super player, but you have it. So let's say the paladin, again, has a bonus of +8, and the wizard has a bonus of +2. We average that, that's 5. So 5 divided by 2, rounded down, is 12, right? Because we always round down in 5th edition, unless it says otherwise, like hit points and jack of all trades. So our half player is going to have an armor class of 12, and I'm sure you can figure out the math on everything else. But that's balance, and I actually have my balance tweaked high. You might not want your balance so high, because it's going to be very difficult for your players, but I like to run really difficult combats. So it works for me. But basically the idea is you have your known quantity, your players, you have your unknown quantity, your monsters, and you've got to use the middle part and the additional weights to try and get them to equal out to your desires. That's the idea behind balance, okay? It's not making things equal, it's not making things fair. It's making sure that the combat goes how you intend it to, that the monsters have the power and the punch that you want them to have. That's basically the idea behind balance, right? So here's a pro tip, it's a little rule of thumb. You can only have 8 or less NPCs per battle. That includes everything, okay? I like to have 1 NPC with the party at most. If it's a 3-man party, I'll allow 1 NPC. If it's a 4-man, I don't allow any. If it's a 5-man party, I'll just throw in an extra monster. I like to outnumber my players in every combat. So if it's a 3-man party, which I like, I don't count the NPC, and I just throw in usually 4 enemies, because I usually forget about the NPC, so it doesn't play in that much. And they usually forget about him too, so it doesn't come in. But they've got a hill giant traveling with them right now, which does kind of affect things, but not too much, because he gets 1 attack, so it's basically immobilizing 1 monster in essence, which isn't too big of a deal, especially with my combats already overbalanced. And they really like the guy, so I leave him in there. You have 8 NPCs or less, and you have 8 points. So as I said, the super player is worth 4. the player plus is worth 2, and I forgot to mention that the half player is worth 1. So if you do the math real quick, that gives you 1 super player, or 2. That gives you a total of 4 player pluses, or a total of 8 half players, right? My favorite combo is 1 super, 1 player, and 1 half player, because that's just a nice rounded combat. They can target the half players first, or they could focus fire on the super player. They can go at it tactically from a lot of different angles. But you can also, these numbers are very flexible, and I'll include it in the description: super player, player plus, and half player, and their prices. But it shouldn't be too easy for you to, or it shouldn't be too hard for you to follow this. And you have 8 points, of course, and that's per combat. And then sometimes if you want it to hit harder, you can add points. If you want them to be softer, you take away points, anything like that. And some things, there's always more art. There's always some art involved in this. It's never pure science, but this adds a lot to the science and should make things a lot easier. So here's what you guys do. I want you to comment down below and in my Discord about your favorite ways to balance monsters, your favorite kinds of monsters and encounters, all that good stuff. I want you to share and subscribe so that everyone can see this video. And then, yeah, that's it. So goodbye, good luck, and have fun in your games.